from Zimbabwe was one of them. The other one was an international journalist called Hopewell Chingono. He was also arrested on the same day. Now, both men were arrested on the grounds that they were allegedly inciting public violence. But what they had in fact done was that they had used Twitter to, call for anti-corruption demonstrations on the 31 of July 2020. And the government obviously did not want people to exercise their right to demonstrate, which is guaranteed in the Zimbabwean constitution. So they decided to arrest these two men, believing that they were the leaders of the July 31 protests. In fact, this was more political persecution because the regime of Mr. Mnangagwa is not willing to allow people space to exercise their constitutional rights. And in the case of Hopewell Chingono, it was very personal for Mr. Mnangagwa, the president, because Hopewell Chingono had led a very important investigative story concerning corruption, which implicated the Mnangagwa family.
Now, when we say corruption, to what level of corruption are we talking about? How widespread is it? And what are the figures that are involved? How much of the wealth is actually going towards this?
Well, we are talking of widespread corruption, corruption on a grand scale in Zimbabwe. And this was always a problem during the time of former President Robert Mugabe, but it has become even worse under Mr. Mnangagwa. The state is essentially captured by a few business elites who are connected to the political elites. And in the case of this corruption, it was the procurement of drugs, medical drugs, which were meant for to fight COVID-19. They were essentially procured and overpriced by more than 200%, being sold to the government. And that corruption investigation saw the Minister of Health being fired and being arraigned before the courts, as well as other officials, senior officials within government who have also been implicated in this corruption. But they were treated with kid gloves. They never spent a night in jail. What we saw was Hopewell Chingono, the journalist, is the one who spent 45 days in very squalid conditions of Zimbabwean jail simply because he had reported corruption.
There has been a lot of talk about external interference in Zimbabwean politics. That this is an issue of the West interfering in the politics of the Zimbabwean government. To what extent is that true or false?
Well, the Zimbabwean government always rely on a strategy of creating and blaming scapegoats. If it is not blaming Western countries for interfering, it is blaming the being puppets of the West, it is blaming drought, it is blaming virtually anybody who tries to try to be kicked. The government of Zimbabwe, using the idea of politics, has always been one of the arguments in order to deflect attention from the
Mr. Magaisa, if you can just move around, perhaps the signal seems to be deteriorating on us. We can't hear you very clearly.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's much better. Yes, you were saying, sorry, we missed much of what you said.
So I was saying that the Zimbabwean government is always fond of...
that line has just dropped us completely. We'll have to perhaps reschedule that interview once again with Mr. Alex Magaisa. He's a senior member, in fact, of the Zimbabwean opposition based in the United Kingdom and was a former aide to the former Prime Minister of the country, the Chief of Staff, in fact, in Morgan Tsvangirai's cabinet and office. And it would be very interesting to have an extended discussion with him. So let's try and see if we can reschedule that for next week. Unfortunately, the line falling on us right now. Coming up after the break, it will be on air with Arai as he talks about diversity, multiculturalism, Ubuntu, and the Azan judgment.
Yes, now. رحمن يا رحمن ساعدني يا رحمن اشرح صدري